So I think you already know my stance on the 2017 film and why I really despise this movie so much because I have personal reasons as to why I really think this movie bombed in the box office because it was just not the Power Rangers that we know and remember. It was boring. The action sequences was not good, and the story just it was just fish out of water in my opinion. So shout out to the movie universe. Let's go ahead and dive into this.
Hello, and welcome to the Movie Universe. I'm your host, Movie Fan. Today, I'm going to do something really special. I'm going to be talking about the movie Power Rangers 2017. But instead of doing my usual thing, because this movie's been out for a little while now, and still it's pretty recent, so we're all very familiar with it, especially us Power Rangers fans. So instead, I'm going to be asking the question, what went wrong with this picture?
Everything.
Because, as we all know, a lot of people, oh boy, that a lot of people were really mad about this, especially us fans. I'll be honest, when I first saw this, I took it with a grain of salt because, one, I knew very well that they were not going to do the same thing that they did back in 1993. And I'm sure a lot of people knew that, but everybody was expecting it to be at least something a little similar to it. Either way, it wasn't exactly what we were hoping for. So today, that's the subject. What went wrong with this movie? Why did this flop the way that it did? Now, in order to do this, I have to number them. Now, I want to make something very clear. I'm not numbering them as in this is the worst, this is the least worst. I'm just numbering them just for clarification here. Now, the first problem, and I think this speaks to everybody on this one, the character development. Now, for all of us, we all knew the Power Rangers, and we all know the characters. However, with this one, because they were trying to start anew, well, they tried to focus a little bit more on the character development by giving these characters, well, some bigger personalities than what they were given in the series, because in the series, they were all goody two shoes. That's the gist of it. In this case, they tried to give them more than that. However, the problem here was they focused way too much on the character development.
Yeah.
It literally ate up 90% of the movie. I'm not kidding. That was literally 90% of the movie right there. It was just character development. And then finally, we get some real action out of it.
Ranger action only lasts for like a minute or two because the fast enemies and the jump cuts. Like it was something about this movie that felt so wrong in my eyes. And looking back on it now, when I went with my cousin to see it, I think 8 years ago, and it's obvious to me that this movie did not work in so many levels because it was strictly not Power Rangers to me, in my humble opinion. Because, like I said, the lack of Ranger Tokusatsu action and the Ranger designs and the Zord designs were mega off. And not only that, but they kept making the Zords small. Like, stop making the robots from a Tokusatsu show small. Like, make them the same size as the monsters. Like, for instance, the 95 movie when Rocky's Ape Zord, Ape Ninja Zord, was small. When he's supposed to be a bigger size than Ivan Ooze's, whatever. They didn't even bother to like do that at all. And now they're doing the same thing with the 2017 movie, and they're making the Zord small, which once again a red flag. The T Rex is supposed to be the same size as Godard while fighting him, and yet they give this nigga a blaster. What? And what's even worse is that, like you said, the movie focused way too much on the characters. Like, I don't mind character development, but if you're gonna make a Power Rangers movie, at least you could have done was focus on characters first, then have them morph into the Power Rangers within 30 minutes. And for an hour long Power Rangers movie, have the Rangers fight Putties, Rita, and Goddard. Have like multiple battles with them to the point where they call the Megazord. They didn't even do none of that. And that's why I prefer the Boom Studio comics better than the TV show and a God Over 2017 film. And for the likes of me, I cannot understand why fans love the 2017 movie so much. It was the most boring films ever.
It was a huge problem. In fact, my friend DHR said it best. It was all over the place, and that's no lie. There was too much going on with everybody. For instance, you had this whole issue with Kimberly being a former cheerleader, but because she did a sext message about a fellow cheerleader, all of a sudden, well, she's in big trouble, and the cheerleaders, of course, they've ousted her and the whole thing. Jason doing that stupid kidnapping the mascot thing and getting himself in trouble. Billy being a little inadequate with his stuff. And, of course, Trini being kind of a badass. And the possible notion that she might be gay in this one. And then, of course, you have Zach, who, in a way, he's trouble, and he can't seem to get it together. But, of course, he has the tragic story about his mom being very sick, and, he's thinking that one of these days she's going to be gone. But either way, this plot was all over the place in the worst way, and not to mention even having Zordon be a jerk, because they put it down that, in this case, Zordon, he was the leader of the Power Rangers, but he failed. And, well, he was really using the Rangers to try to bring himself back to life. Until the end, where instead he gave up his life force to save Billy. Now that's the real Zordon, I know. He would do that. But the other thing? No. Either way, it's true. It was all over the place. It's like the director did not know what exactly he wanted it to be. And on top of that, I'm sure Saban had a lot to do with it as well, because, well, let's get real. It's no secret that whenever Saban has his hands on Power Rangers, he is all over everything. I give them credit for trying to throw in some nostalgic moments, like, for instance, they threw in the theme song Go-Go Power Rangers from the 1995 film. And they did do some great nostalgic moments, like when they first meet Zordon, and he gives them their oath. And, of course, when they decide, no, we don't want anything to do with this, and they leave. But, of course, Jason stays back for a little bit, and then he finally goes. That's straight out of the first episode. And I do love that. But that's literally the only credit I'm giving it, because everything else, they go in so many different directions. Like, for instance, during the battle against the Putties, where all of a sudden Jason has his power sword. And there was nothing for it. No explanation as to where that came from or how he got a hold of it. All of a sudden, whoa, he's got the power sword. And then when he talks to Zordon for one last time in that movie, he puts it back in the command center. I never figured out what that was all about until finally they came out and told us. Originally, they were going to do a whole Sword in the Stone Excalibur thing, where Jason would have to prove himself as leader by pulling out the power sword. And they decided, no, we're not going to do that. We'll just...
That was hella stupid, for one thing. And this movie just, it broke me. It broke me bad. You know what I'm saying? In a depressed way, because we were all expecting this movie to be like the first episode, but it went all the way wrong.
We're going to keep him putting it back in just to have this moment with Zordon.
Yeah.
You either do it or you don't do it. That's really the truth. You can't just go halfway on this, because that confused everybody. Because all of a sudden he's got the sword and there's no explanation, and then this. And I know a lot of people were complaining about the fact that they were all in detention and it was literally
Breakfast
Club. And I think that speaks for
that's
itself.
Why I hate about that movie as well.
The third biggest problem, and this is a very common complaint here, is the fact that it took forever for them to finally morph.
Stupid.
Now, there's a scene where Billy morphs, I think, somewhere in the middle, but that was very temporary. And either
why is it every time I see superhero films and costumes look all CGI? Like, I miss the days when we used to see a lot of martial arts movies and TV shows and films where everything is all practical, not all CGI. It's like in these suits, when the Rangers are in action fighting the Putties, the suits were pretty much 90% CGI and 40% practical, in my opinion. But it's unfortunate that we can't even get that nowadays because everything is all computer graphics. And I don't mind CGI, but don't do it to the point where it becomes too much and the fights feel a little unrealistic.
Does not fit at all. When Billy morphs, he just does it. And apparently it was because he had to care about them. And that's the weird thing about this.
Yeah, that's
Zordon
stupid.
says in order for them to morph, they have to care about each other, which makes no sense at all. Because why would the power coins work on that kind of principle? The idea was that the power coins give them the ability because they're good people, not because I care about you. I'm sorry, that does not make any sense. And when they finally do morph, they had to step into the footprints, as they're called, in order to finally do it. Once again, that makes no sense, especially when you consider the fact that they had the power coins and they had the morphers. So if they have to care and step in the footprints, then why have the morphers? What's the point of having them if they can't do this? Dragon Sword! Mastodon!
Pterodactyl!
Triceratops!
Saber-tooth tiger!
Tyrannosaurus! Yeah! Now the
Speaking of the Morpher, before this movie even came out, how come the Rangers did not use that wannabe Kamen Rider Morpher in the movie to morph? But instead, they had to step on a dumb footprint to morph. Like, honestly, I'm glad that we did not get a sequel of this god awful film because it would have been 10 times worse. No martial arts action between Tommy and the Rangers. It was just not. I mean, it was just not going to be Power Rangers without, martial arts. That's literally what this movie was. A wannabe Power Rangers film. And oh my goodness, the marketing in this film is so bad. Like it literally got to a point where it was just hard to watch nowadays because it was just an all along bad film, and I don't know how everyone is so delusional into thinking that this movie is good. Like, tell me one good thing about this movie that made you love these characters, because I didn't. And for one thing, I regret defending this movie of how they made it, they introduced it, because I remember back in 2015 or 16 when we got the news that the Power Rangers movie was coming back in the theaters, and we were all hyped for it. I defended the costumes, I defended the helmets, and that was my biggest regret. Trust and believe when I say this, my biggest regret was defending a movie that had little to no care in the world for Power Rangers. That was on me. That's on me.
costumes themselves.
Yeah.
They are original, but the problem is they look too much like Iron Man. And that's
Uh-huh.
definitely not what the fans wanted. They wanted them to look at least something like they did in the series.
Yes.
Were we expecting carbon copies of?
You know what? I think there's this app called Superhero Studio. I follow their Instagram page, and they're known for making like good looking Power Ranger statues. And the costumes on the statues alone looked way better than the 2017 ones, because the 2017 ones look way too basic. You could barely draw all the parts of the costumes. And not only that, but they look like Power Rangers. They look like dinosaurs. The 2017, you don't know which one is whose. The only ones that looked like dinosaurs were Jason and Kimberly's. Billy's, Zach, and Trini's did not.
Didn't want it to be like this. And to make matters worse, when they morph, it is literally at the end of the movie. So we barely get about 5 or 10 minutes with them finally morphed. And you know what the irony here is? This is very much the same mistake that Saban did when he made Turbo a Power Rangers movie. Because in Turbo, they don't morph until finally they get their turbo powers. The only thing that Turbo has up on this one is the fact that they get their turbo powers and they morph in the middle of the movie. And then for some reason they just don't do it
But
until
it only
they
happened
finally
in the
get to
third
the
act.
big final battle. But the point is, they still morphed beforehand.
In my honest opinion, the Turbo film sucked ass. But at the same time, they did it into the third act, which is a big problem. And I hope to God that they don't do that in the reboot with Paramount, because we don't need another 2017 mistake. And you heard when Jizaku said that Paramount is being extra careful and being cautious about not to make the same mistakes of what the 2017 film did. And I'm glad that they're taking notes and listening to the fans and understanding their issues with the 2017 movie and not repeating the same mistakes for the Mighty Morphin reboot.
So it seems to me that someone didn't learn from the last time.
At
because
all.
that was one of the biggest complaints about that movie. The fifth reason, and this is probably the most notorious one of them all, the Zords.
Yes.
They do not really look like they're supposed to. I said this once, I'm not going to say it again, so I'm just going to revert back to my old video and let that do the talking. The CG on these Zords, it doesn't look any better than what we had back in 95, to be honest. I think some people would say that the texture and all that was added to them might be just a little bit better, but not. Original Dinozord counterparts. That's the biggest problem.
Way better than the
Tyrannosaurus
ones.
Zord, it is literally the size of buildings, and in the series, it was a lot bigger than most of the buildings.
Yes.
Give or take a skyscraper or two. But, you know, aside of that, it's got machine guns for arms. Machine guns? Really? And the Triceratops Zord, well, the look is kind of cool. I love the blue color, and I love how his horns look like
It's probably
sharp
the best
knives,
Zords out of all of them.
but 6 legs? Really?
Yeah, no.
6 legs? I heard the idea they were going for was that it was alien technology trying to copy stuff, but without actually doing it. But seriously. And of course, the pterodactyl Zord is actually pretty good. That one is actually probably the best one of them all, because it looks something like a pterodactyl and flies more like a jet, which makes perfect sense, because that's what the pterodactyl did in the series. The Saber-tooth Tiger Zord was okay, except for the fact that it has guns right by the face. And, well, we don't get too much screen time with the Saber-tooth Tiger, which really bugs me, because I wanted to see a little bit more with that. Come to think of it, we don't get enough time with the Triceratops either. So, yeah, it's like, okay, why are we not getting enough time with the Zords? The most we're getting is Tyrannosaurus, Pterodactyl, and oh my god, the Mastodon. The Mastodon. The worst of the worst.
Very beyond
my-
worse.
I don't want to talk about this one because I've talked about it numerous times as to how horrible it is, but it has to be said. That Mastodon is a joke. The worst joke in history. For some reason, they decided to give him 6 legs and have a straight snout and tusks, and he's real hunched up like that. He looks like a big bug with tusks.
I know, right?
That's what he looks like. A bug with tusks. He doesn't look anything like a mastodon. It is truly the worst. And everybody agrees on this. Literally, all the fans, even the non-fans agree on this. Because it is pathetic. It looks absolutely pathetic. Because, I'm sorry. Granted, it's supposed to be alien technology, but they said that it's supposed to copy the most powerful things of the time, which was dinosaurs. And
Not really.
Do they really look truly like dinosaurs?
Heck no.
No, not quite. The Tyrannosaurus is pretty close by comparison. Saber-tooth tiger, yeah.
Like I said in the video, instead of making a T-Rex the same size as Goldar while fighting his opponents, they made him small. They made all of the Zords small. I don't get it.
Triceratops has the head right, but the Mastodon doesn't look anything like it. It looks nothing like a Mastodon at all.
Never did.
It is the most disgraceful Zord in existence. It really is. And you know what? Because of how disgraceful this is and how it looks nothing like a Mastodon, instead it looks more like a bug, I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it what it should have been called in the first place. I'm going to call it Master Bug from now on. Because that's exactly what it is. A Master Bug. Because it looks nothing, I repeat, nothing like a Mastodon. Again, bug with tusks. That's what it looks like. So Master Bug. That's what I'm going to call it. Because it is not worthy of the name Mastodon. And we all know it. And when they become the Megazord, a lot of people have accused it of looking like Optimus Prime.
Yeah, it does.
You know, they're partway right. It does look like Optimus Prime. But if you look closely, the shape of it resembles Goldar. Or I should say, the 2017
which is something that the
version
T-Rex
of Goldar.
should have
We
looked
don't get
like.
much out of it at all. I mean, the look, it is not true to the original series at all. It looks way too different. And the CG isn't much better. Yep, that's exactly right. What kills me the most is we saw the concept art of what they could have looked like, and those are
And they look like dinosaurs. What is so hard of making things more recognizable? I mean, did they completely miss the mark on what the Zords should have looked like back in the day? But it just seems like they just wanted to do what they want to do with it. And just say F you to the fans. They're just our design, our version, whether you like it or not. The 2017 movie should have looked like this. If not bigger. Because in Zyuranger, the Zords were bigger. But this, they look smaller. If not somewhat redeemable better than what we got in the final form. The concept art looked way better than the movie itself.
Why the hell didn't they go with that?
Yes.
Those were beautiful. Those were perfect. It was just an upgraded version from their original counterparts. That would have been great. The sixth reason why this flopped is probably the most important, and that would be the lack of original Power Ranger cameos. When we all were watching the commercials and waiting for it to come out, we were all hoping that the original Rangers would make
Only the ones
an
that made it
appearance.
were Kimberly
we
and
did
Tommy.
get an appearance from Amy Jo Johnson and Jason David Frank close to the very end for about a fraction of a second. And if you watch the deleted scenes, there is another scene that they did which didn't make it into the picture. But the fact is, we wanted more, way more than just that. We wanted to see all of them, except for Tui Trang, of course, because she was gone. But it would have been nice to have had a picture of her in Trini's house or something. Because, you know, it would have been a good shout-out. A lot like it was in the special Once and Always. And we didn't get that. Instead, they literally kept everybody out. Now, I talked about this before, and I'm not going to make you watch that video again, folks, because you've seen it too many times. So I'll just abbreviate. They literally went underground, so none of the original Rangers could find them. They actually went under the alias Shirt. I'm not kidding. However, Amy did manage to find them thanks to her agent in Canada. As for Jason David Frank, I don't know, because he never talked about it. And I don't know. Maybe they invited him because he was loyal to the fans of the series. While Amy, she snuck her way
JDF at the
in,
time
and
was
good for
tripping. He
her
was
on
crashing
that.
out.
But for the rest of them, they weren't able to find him because they literally made sure that they couldn't. I've never heard of anything like this before, and this is ridiculous because everybody was hoping for cameo appearances from him. I mean, I'm sorry. It is practically it is an unwritten rule that when you have original cast members from the TV show and they're still alive to make an appearance in the movie that is based off of the show that they made famous, you bring them in. You invite them. You call them. And if they turn you down, okay, I'm sorry. That's too bad. Their loss. But they didn't even try to invite him. Instead, we got to make sure they don't find us. So go underground. I've never heard of anything like this ever happening before. And this is inexcusable. And what really bugs me the most about this, they had a golden opportunity that will never come around again, especially now that Jason David Frank is gone. They could have had the original Rangers play the new Rangers' parents. Just picture it.
I heard about
Austin
that.
St. John is Jason's dad. Jason David.
Speaking of Jason's dad, the guy who played Jason's dad looks and sounds like Austin St. John. Just so you know.
His parents. Walter Jones and Karen Ashley are Billy's parents. Once again, Saban blew it. And it's not just him. It's a director and everybody else involved. They blew it. They missed a golden opportunity here that will never happen again. The seventh reason why this flopped, and this one is something that nobody's ever thought about before, and that's the toy market. Now, as we all know, when Power Rangers first came out, the toys, they were everything. They were a huge part of it, and they still are, because every season that comes out, there's always new Megazords, new Power Coins, new Morphers, new merchandise, new Power Ranger suits, all kinds of things. And the toys are always where it's at, because as you see by my Power Rangers Megazord collection back there, it's all about that. That's one of the key things. And it's even stuff like this, for instance. It could be anything big or small, but it's usually the toys that everybody wants the most. Because of the transforming ability, the flip heads, they're great. They're all great. Unfortunately for this, the toys, they were total crap. Let's take a look at the Power Rangers figures. Now, obviously, they're not very eye-catching. In fact, if you take a look at them, the colors are extremely dull compared to the original toys and even the Legacy editions. And I've even heard that some of them are very stiff moving. And even worse, they don't have any real weapons. In fact, this is what they got. Just energy blasts that you attach to the fists. Only the Red Ranger has his power sword, and it's blue for some reason, which, again, makes no sense, because why would he have blue? Because he's not the Blue Ranger, he's the Red Ranger. And if you think that's bad, take a look at the Zords. They are pathetic. For instance, Megazord, they either have him really super mega huge or pretty short. Now, that's not such a bad thing, but again, the colors, they are very dull looking.
So ugly.
They do not stand out. They're supposed to pop. Now, let's take a look at the toys from 1993. Obviously, the colors, they pop. They have all kinds of decals on them that really stand out. For this, there's nothing that stands out about this at all. They're very dull looking. It's like they didn't even try. And in fact, I've actually seen a lot of videos lately about people who had gotten these toys and they literally repainted them and added texture, highlights, all kinds of things to go from this to this.
That looks so much better. So much better.
The toys are still junk to me, but it is a sight better because at least this time the colors actually pop, which is really great. And furthermore, the Megazord is very clunky. In fact, you could barely even move him at all. All you can mostly move is the arms. Granted, we had that problem back in the day, but at least with that one, you had something to work with. For this, you really don't. Here's a little bonus for you. Now, I don't know if this is true, but when there was talk that there was going to be a sequel, of course, we were all wondering, what was the Dragonzord going to look like? Well, I came across this. Now, I don't know if this was for real or if this was someone's idea.
Oh, God, that looks worse.
Look like,
it looks so worse.
That's basically what I came across. Maybe it would have been, maybe it wouldn't. Let's just say, thank God this never happened. And then, of course, we have the Morphers and Power Coins. Now, the Morphers...
The Power Coins look good, though. That's the only best part about that Morpher is the Power Coins. But the Morpher looks like a rejected Morpher that were inspired by the Kamen Rider series. Very lazy. And they didn't even use it in the movie. Why? I don't know.
That saying. But what's even worse is the Power Coins. Just take a good look at them. They just look like pink, blue, and black crystals. That's it. And you can't see their dinosaur symbols. And they actually do have them, but you have to hold it in the right light to see it. And even then, it's so transparent, you really can't tell. So let's compare that to the
The
original
OG
Morph,
Power Coins are
which
better
looks
too.
better to
But I
you.
get what he's saying.
So, as you can see by the toys, they're total junk. There's nothing that stands out about them. They're very dull looking. They're pathetic looking, even. And it's no wonder why this flopped. Now, granted, the toy market is a separate issue, but they do go hand in hand because they've been like that ever since the show first premiered. And that, my friends, is why Power Rangers 2017 failed. Let me know what you think. This is Movie.
Shout out to Movie Universe once again for this awesome video. And like I said, at the end of the day, I hope and pray to God they do not make the same mistake with this reboot like they did in the 2017 film with the marketing, the Zord designs, the Ranger cast. And I hope that Hasbro and Paramount are listening and watching our videos about it, of what we want in the reboot. And maybe they'll listen, maybe they not, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I will always love Power Rangers no matter what. I don't care what they do with it as long as it's done right. Just don't repeat the same mistakes like they did in the 2017 film. So, yeah. Link to the original video will be down below, and I'm going to catch y'all.